And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com. Also brought to you in part by Yahoo DFS. We'll talk more about that momentarily. Dan Strafford, Dave Lockren, along with you on this Wednesday morning. We have a 4-game early slate that we'll be covering here on the podcast. As always, check out the MLB Strategy Show and the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. Lofty, how the hell are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Drew Smiley. Can you believe it?
I can't.
It's really something else with this guy, man. Now he's pitched 2 starts for the Phillies, comes in with an 8+ ERA. He goes 6 one-run innings with 8 Ks, then 7 scoreless with 5 Ks. I don't know what it is, man. It certainly isn't Citizens Bank Park suppressing the runs. He's just getting a lot of strikeouts and double plays. Pretty crazy.
On Tuesday night, there is a DFS contest I'm in for the Tout Wars contest, which is a season-long contest, but it's all some of the owners over there who play in DFS. What do you think my total score was as we record here? What do you think my score was as we're recording this content?
Good or bad?
It's bad.
49.
61 points.
Oh, okay. I've seen worse.
Yeah, I mean, I've had worse for damn sure. But was not my night. Did not get. Pitching wasn't terrible, but I had a bunch of Yankees in that lineup. Yankees not showing up at Yankee Stadium against.
That was bad. Yeah.
The Arizona Diamondbacks 4-2 final. Their Dodgers having a good night in Colorado, which they had not done previously. So good to see from them. We do also have 4 games on this slate, one of which being the Pittsburgh Pirates and Cincinnati Reds. Still waiting on confirmation that Yasiel Puig is in fact dealt to Cleveland. Seems like that's what all the rumors are pointing to as we record. But there was also a brawl, Dave, where Amir Garrett decided to go full Jon Snow and charge at the Pittsburgh Pirates dugout, and he landed a decent punch. You don't see that often in baseball fights. It seemed like he got a decent one-time left-handed. Very
unusual, actually. Usually they're just flailing and nothing comes of it, and everyone puffs out their chest. But no, this was a legitimate fight, and Yasiel Puig always seems to get in the middle. Yasiel Puig seems to live for that stuff, man.
Exactly right. It reminded me of the Yankees-Orioles fight from 96, I think. Graham Lloyd and Darryl Strawberry going after Armando Benitez after he plunked Tino Martinez. Google, YouTube that one. It's a hell of a fight between those two teams. But the way Amir Garrett approached the dugout seemed very similar to the way Lloyd ran out of the bullpen and all the way over to try to approach and hit Benitez and threw a haymaker. But I mention that simply because suspensions are possible and warnings are possible. So you're going to get umpire warnings before that game even starts, where they warn both benches that if there's anything close to headhunting or pitches thrown with intention, that you're going to see people tossed. And this is a game where Luis Castillo is on the mound for Cincinnati and Agrizal is on the mound for Pittsburgh. So you have 2 different ends of the spectrum. You have ace or would-be ace with Castillo, somebody who is going to command the respect of the rotation and the clubhouse. And then Agrizal, as a youngster for Pittsburgh staff, could feel the pressure to throw at whomever is left from Cincinnati as they come in. But we're going to go game by game here quickly. We'll get to that one secondarily. I do want to mention Yahoo Sports, Yahoo DFS does have tons of contests. They also have $3 management free contests on certain days. You'll want to check those out. And they also are going to have a ton for NFL, which is just around the corner. Awesemo.com already has NFL content coming out. Lofty's been working on season-long stuff. You have Nolan Kelly doing a lot of DFS stuff already. Sort of way too early prognostications for week 1, which I agree with Nolan. It is way too early, but that's me. I'm a baseball fan. So
it's also a lot of fun.
Yeah, you look forward, and then you realize that injuries happen and so much can change leading up to week 1. But
of course,
still good to look forward.
But it's also enjoyable.
Yes, absolutely, and good to look forward to, and good to get the brain working this early and understanding matchups and what could be, and then you're not trying to scramble on the Saturday of week number 1, figuring out exactly where you're going to go. We dive into this one thinking of DK first and foremost. I'll pull up FanDuel, see what early slate they might have, if anything. But Yahoo typically with the all-day slate for Wednesdays. Castillo, Soroka, Greinke, Junis, Tanaka, Aaron Sanchez, I do that every time. Anibal Sanchez for Washington, Wogaspak for Toronto, and Agrasol. Have a fun stat for Wogaspak when we get there. But let's start with Atlanta and Washington. That's Anibal Sanchez versus Mike Soroka. We'll go into over-unders quickly. We'll look at this matchup, but I assume Soroka and Sanchez at least have to be considered on a 4-game slate. Any defining take here on one being better than the other, price point wise or matchup wise?
I mean, the pricing is what makes it difficult, because Mike Soroka's price has been pretty much exceeding his ceiling for what seems like a while. Now we don't have that being the case against Washington, but it's a tough spot. I mean, it's a difficult spot for him, and at least he's right-handed, so that's the thing. Lefties have fared a lot worse against Washington. The interesting thing with Soroka, though, is as good as he's been at preventing runs, the guy is only the guy is only striking out like 8 batters per inning. And when you're paying a premium for a guy, you want to be able to get that strikeout upside. I think that's the one thing that really curbs the upside for somebody like Mike Soroka. I'd rather have someone that, maybe is not as good at preventing runs, but can go out there and get a good amount of strikeouts. Maybe once in a while you'll see that from him, but it's not very frequent. It's very infrequent, actually. And on the season, this is a Washington team that is 19th in K rate against righties. Now, they only have a 97 WRC plus. They haven't been that prolific in terms of power, but I think it's still a tough spot for Soroka to come in there and get the numbers that he needs. So probably passing on Soroka there. On the other side, though, with Anibal Sanchez, I do it all the time as well. With Anibal Sanchez, he's been impressive this season. Again, take nothing away from the guy. 6,800. This honestly might just be one of those spots where you say, okay, he's 6,800. He's been good enough. Maybe he can get me 6 innings and 6 Ks, because it's not a spot that you particularly love at all. But most of the pitchers on this slate, Greinke's your best overall pitcher along with Castillo, but he's facing the Yankees.
Yeah, it's going to be a rough go to try to figure out exactly whether or not a Greinke is worthwhile while you're figuring out price points. You look at what Sanchez has against the Atlanta Braves in Washington, so you don't have the homer-friendly confines there of SunTrust Park. This is in Nationals Park, which has some upside. 23.1% K percentage for the Braves on the year against righties. They do have a 9.6 percentage walk ratio, 105 WRC plus, an ISO of 198. But the price point is at least attractive at 6,800 for Sanchez. As we looked through offensively, I assume you then probably take one-offs from both sides. You talk about Juan Soto, you talk about Freddie Freeman or a Nick Markakis at a specific price point Markakis is on the injured list. Keep forgetting that. But you have a few lefty bats here who may have some upside for both squads. Any stacking here that you see, or is this simply just going to be trying to find the best bats in the best spots?
Yeah, I'm not really in love with either side of this game offensively, and I don't think you should be. Are both teams quality offenses? Yeah, absolutely. But neither spot is all that appealing from an offensive perspective. Now, let's see what the weather looks like. We'll see what the over-unders are here. All of that can play a role for sure, but I think I'm mostly staying away from it. Let me see if you already have it pulled up, feel free to fire away, but try and pull up the odds for this game here.
I have Atlanta minus 120 and over under of 10. I don't have team totals.
Okay.
Which I assume would be 5.2 and 4.8, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, the same thing. 5.2, 4.8 would make the most sense. Yep. That's what I think too. And you said Atlanta's a slight favorite, which makes sense with Soroka on the mound.
Yep.
But honestly, those aren't even that high totals for 2019.
Yeah. I think you're dealing with a game. Let's run through here quickly. 10, 10, 9, 5, and 10. So those are our 4 games on this early slate. You do have 2 later games in Dodgers, Rockies, Tigers, Angels, which is not on this DK slate. But let's turn our attention to Pirates and Reds, and I want to hammer home that I will put a little bit of an asterisk on this one simply because you don't know where this one will go. I'm not one who is a fan of beaning or payback, but I do want to put a pin in it from a potential hamper on your lineup building simply because who knows what Castillo or Agrizal or what these teams decide is proper retribution for what happened on Tuesday night. We have a minus 210 in favor of Cincinnati, 9.5 over under. Castillo on the mound has been very, very, very good on the year when it comes to pretty much every possible stat you could think of. He's just been really dynamic, has come into his own as a starter in Major League Baseball. He's 10-4 on DK. Agrizal all the way down there at 5K. I assume Castillo price independent would be on your radar, but how do you see this one playing out, and do you have any strong takes on either of these pitchers?
I mean, just to kind of put everything into focus, to give you an idea of where Castillo stands on this slate, the Pirates have a 3.9 run total. The next closest team, the next lowest total is 4.5 for Arizona, then 4.9, then 5. He's a minus 208 favorite, as you mentioned. The next closest team is minus 130. It's the Yankees with Masahiro Tanaka. So as far as favorites go and lowest implied totals, no one has it as good as Castillo on this slate. And it's honestly not even close. So while I don't love the matchup at all, because the strikeouts aren't always there with Pittsburgh, and you know they're not a good team, but they're not a terrible team just from a fantasy standpoint, and Great American Ballpark sucks for pitchers. Castillo has not been held back at all by Great American this year. I think especially at 10-4 on DraftKings, he is obviously the best overall play on this slate. And quite frankly, Dan, I don't even think it's close. Like we can nitpick the matchup, sure, but Soroka's got Washington, Greinke's got the Yankees in New York, and you're talking about Jake Junis and Tanaka, who is, I always say this, maybe the most enigmatic pitcher in the league. Less so this year because he's been more bad than good. Castillo is clearly the number one, and yeah, I think it's reasonable that you brought that point up about the brawl and how will everything be affected. Will Castillo go out there and peg somebody? It's possible, but it feels like that would be a pretty dumb decision given that he's easily your best pitcher.
Yep.
We've seen crazier things happen. I'm just going to go ahead. I think it's worth the risk compared to the other guys on the slate. Even if you're trying to get leverage, if you're trying to be contrarian, like where are you going? Are you going to go to Greinke against the Yankees? You're going to go to Soroka? You could go to Soroka against Washington, fine, but like the ceiling is just so much higher with someone like Castillo, and it's not close.
Agreed. What about the other side? Agrizal, just the cheap pitcher on the slate, at least worth a look simply because he's 5K?
I mean, I think anybody's in play on this slate.
Right.
Yeah, I do. And, well, we
the Reds don't walk much. They strike out a decent amount. I know this is Great American Ballpark, so you have to chalk that up for some potential home run power on a warm day. But Agrizal has a decent matchup here with the active roster for the Reds. 23.3% K percentage, 7.2% walk, and then a 90 WRC plus, 188 ISO, at least in play enough, right? Like when we're talking about a 4-game slate.
Yeah, what do you think his K rate is?
What is his K rate?
What Agrizal's K rate is? Take a guess.
I have not looked at this, so I will say 19%.
Take 10 off of that.
Take 10 off of that? It's not 9%.
9.6%.
His K. Oh,
he's yeah. He has 13 Ks in 33 innings. Pretty incredible, huh?
That is
a 5.5% swinging strike rate.
All right, so fine.
So if you're going to him at 5K, I mean, you're hoping he goes like 6 innings and
right,
and something works out, like anything.
All right, so
5 in the third inning, 1 strikeout, 6 innings, 0 strikeouts, 6 inning, 1 strikeout, 6 innings, 3 strikeouts. That's so crazy.
Those are crazy numbers and makes him much less of an appealing option. But 4-game slate will make you do some strange things. Greinke, Tanaka, game you've already talked about in passing a little bit. It is a 10 over under minus 135 in favor of the New York Yankees at home with Tanaka on the mound. 7-6, 4.79 ERA. I don't think even begins to explain how much Tanaka has struggled on the year, especially with the long ball. Greinke has reinvented himself once again, throwing a lot of off-speed / change-ups on this season, 10-4 and a 2.87 ERA. Greinke in Yankee Stadium seems like a recipe for disaster. 4-game slate, though. How does this one break down for you?
I still don't know if you can get the Greinke here. I mean, Greinke and Soroka are two guys. Neither get a ton of strikeouts, right? Greinke's fine, like he's okay, but he doesn't have an elite K rate. I think if it's between Greinke and Soroka, I'd probably just go to Soroka. It is a better overall matchup for a right-handed pitcher than the Yankees are for Greinke. And, with baseball, look, they have an implied total above 5. Like it's crazy how things have changed. It's not far off from Washington against Soroka, but I guess the one thing with Greinke would be that he could probably go deep into this game, but so can Soroka. And I think both of them struggle to get strikeouts here. I think Greinke definitely struggles to get strikeouts here. He does have a start against the Yankees earlier this season, 7 2/3, 1 run, and 7 strikeouts. But once again, are you using that as a reason to play him here? If you were to roster Greinke because he's $8,600 on a 4-game slate, I'm not going to call you crazy for it. I mean, I get why you would consider it, but we can't you can't sit here and act like it's a favorable spot. I mean, there are very, very few slates where you would consider Greinke in this spot, and I think that's probably the easiest way to put it.
Yep, I think that's spot on. Tanaka on the other side draws a little bit of interest, or does he give up multiple home runs in this contest, or both on a 4-game slate?
Yeah, it could definitely be both, and I actually do think he warrants some consideration just because he's inexpensive. What sucks about Tanaka this year is, last year, year before that, even when he struggled, he would still get strikeouts. He only has a 20% strikeout rate this year. It is highly concerning, and I don't necessarily know what to make of it, but there he is. I think just because he's cheap means that we can at least give some consideration there. And there's not much else to it than that. Masahiro Tanaka is still capable, despite the low K rate. If he went out there and struck out 7 or 8, it's doable. Arizona is not a terrible team, but they're much better against lefties. And I think just to put it all in context for you, very simply, they have the second lowest total on the slate at 4.5. No one else is lower than 5 right now, or 4.9. And he's a minus 130, so he's the second heaviest favorite on the slate, and he's cheap. So outside of Castillo, the numbers in Vegas at least work in Tanaka's favor here.
All right, let's close as we move on to our final game. Well, offensively, I assume, again, these are the Yankee bats are at least in consideration simply because of who they are, right?
They are. I kind of think Arizona might even be more appealing, though, just because of Tanaka's struggles with the long ball. He's allowing, more than 1.5 home runs per 9 this year, 1.84 to lefties, striking them out at 16%. So if you've got like Dyson and if you've got, say, who is it? Dyson, Peralta, I guess Lamb would be in the lineup, Ketel Marte. If you're able to throw a bunch of lefties in the lineup, then I think it does make sense that it could spell some trouble for Masahiro Tanaka. So I think both sides of that are pretty interesting.
All right, let's close it out with Kansas City and Toronto. Quick look at the odds. Minus 115 in favor of KC with Jake Junis on the mound. A 10 over under. The stat I wanted to bring to you before about Wogesback, and depending on which projection system you use over on Fangraphs, Jacob Ogesback, after Stroman was dealt, is the projected FIP and XFIP leader for the Toronto Blue Jays, up around 4.7. So yeah, 4.7, 4.70.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
Wow.
it's between him and Trent Thornton for the rest of the year, but it's not pretty when it comes to the Blue Jays rotation. And he gets a Kansas City Royals team that has been one we've targeted in the past, and one that doesn't have a ton of power per se, but obviously has enough pop that they can be a little bit of a challenge. They don't strike out a ton, 28.8% against righties, 318. Let's see, a 96 WRC plus, 158 ISO though. So not a ton of power when it comes to Royals, as I point out correctly here from the stats over on Fangraphs. What do you make of this one? Is this a game that, even on a 4-game slate, is vastly unappealing?
So let's take a look at the highest K rates on this slate. You've got Castillo at 28.6, Greinke 23.6, Junis at 21.8. Jake Junis is striking righties out at 21%, lefties out at 22%. And while he does have some issues with homers, that's no surprise, and we've known about that for a while, particularly against righties. I don't think it's crazy to consider somebody like Junis on this slate either. Now, again, context is key here. The same reason we talk about Tanaka or, anyone else. Jake Junis does have the, third or fourth highest, let's see, what did I say? Third or fourth? Third highest K rate on this slate behind Castillo and Greinke. And the matchup against Toronto isn't perfect, but it's also not terrible when you consider the rest of the teams on this slate. The Blue Jays have the 5th highest K rate in the league against righties. They have a 93 WRC plus, which ranks 7th worst in the league, tied with the Giants and worse than the Padres and Orioles. Now, what's interesting about them is they have a 311 weighted on base average. They just don't get on base very often. 5th lowest WOBA in the league against righties on their active roster. But their ISO is north of 200, and it actually is in the top 10 of the league. So they hit a lot of home runs, and they have a good amount of power, but they're oftentimes hitting a ton of solo shots because they're not getting anybody on base. So when you break down how this matchup works out for Jake Junis, it doesn't not make sense, or I could say it makes sense to consider him a viable option simply because guys that give up some home runs with no runners on base can still have you can still pitch deep into this game and give up a couple of runs against a team like Toronto that doesn't pile them on and doesn't run up your pitch count. So if Junis went 7 innings here with a couple of runs, maybe a pair of solo shots and 7-8 strikeouts, I really wouldn't be surprised. And he's actually flashed enough upside for me to say, hey, 8K for Junis is not that crazy.
All right, let's talk some quick offenses here. If you were to talk about these 4 games overall, which is your favorite offense?
Let's see. By the way, with Wagspack, how do you pronounce it? Wagspack?
That's how I've been going, but let's be honest, we all know I'm not necessarily.
You might actually be right on this one. Just wanted to get all the pitchers in here since it's only 4 games. 20.6% K rate. It is the same, by the way, as Mike Soroka. Isn't that interesting? And higher than Masahiro Tanaka. If you thought that he was worth considering here because he's dirt cheap, I don't have a huge issue with that. But it's really just because it's not a great Kansas City team. Maybe he can give you 6 innings. He has not lasted 6 innings in 1 start, though. So not really excited about it. But he's also faced Tampa, Boston twice, Tampa again, Detroit once where he had 7 strikeouts. Maybe it's not crazy. I'd rather have him over Agrizal just because Agrizal's strikeout rate is 9%. So that should give you an idea of what we're working with. Now, you asked what's the top. I'd say, honestly, man, I think it's probably Cincinnati because Agrizal is just going to have so many balls put in play that as long as you're putting the ball in play, because the funny thing is there's a lot of there's a lot of bad spots, but not a ton of just like god awful pitchers here. Same with Junis and same with Wagspack and same with Sanchez and even Tanaka. But I'd say with temperatures, it's going to be around 82 degrees, 83 degrees. That's solid. A lot of humidity in Cincinnati. This won't be good for ag result. I don't really care about it for Castillo because you just have to go there. Let's say Cincinnati. Arizona is interesting to me. And because Junis is such a homer-prone guy, if he's getting ownership, Toronto could be very interesting just in the event that he goes out there and coughs up multiple long balls.
All right, let's leave it there. As always, you can find Dave over on Awesemo.com Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That gets to the deep dive, which is MLB's right up each and every day. Adam has it for you on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. If you want to become a member of Awesemo Plus, which is our premium package over on Awesemo.com, that would be best served by using the promo code EARLYBIRD. Gets you 50% off your first month. If you want to try to get in for free, check out Awesemo_com, which is our Twitter handle. Constant giveaways over there, so you can try to get in as you talk through different takes on Twitter. You can reply to some of the tweets over there and get in to a contest and potentially get 3 months or 1 month for free. Again, Awesemo NFL, MLB, and all the different handles as well to follow on Twitter. You know who you can follow on Twitter is Dave Lochran. That's at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D, at Dan Stratford for myself. And of course, it's Awesemo_com, as I just said. Dave, any final thoughts, whether for this slate or for anything else going on in the world before we say so long?
No, check out the Deeper Dive, 5 p.m. Eastern time, and check out all the content over at Awesemo.com, including our seasonal NFL stuff. It's good stuff. We're having a lot of fun with it, and we got some good stuff coming down the pike, so keep your eyes out for that too.
There you have it. As always, tomorrow morning you get Emac and Adam right here on none other than the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com.